What's going on, guys? Mackenzie Long here. So today we're talking about final expense policies and what you should be looking for and how to use them. And if you stick to the end, I'll show you some pretty cool ways that this can become a great part of your financial plan, even if you're young. Now, a final expense policy can also be called a burial or maybe a funeral insurance policy, and that's typically kind of what it's used for. So if we look at just the industry in general, it is going to be a whole life policy, but built in a way that generally doesn't build any or very little cash value. So it's not meant for the investment or the saving side of it, like a permanent policy would be, but it is a whole life policy, generally because people are going to be purchasing them when they're older, or the purpose is to have it when you're older, so that way you can cover your expenses for your passing. Now, you have probably heard it in my other videos, but this whole month we are doing a financial literacy campaign, a booked up event around financial education. And that particular book that we're talking about now is How Money Works, Stop Being a Sucker. If you haven't gotten this book already, I highly recommend it. This particular concept is not in there because these products and services change often, but it will give you the foundation you need to become financially educated. Now, you can find it on Amazon. I have a link down below if you'd like to use that. It's about 26 bucks. Sometimes you can find it at a discount. Or in our campaign, what we're doing is we've purchased over $50,000 of financial literacy resources, and we are going to be giving those away in our community, and obviously you're part of that community as well. So if that's something that interests you, down below is a MailChimp link that we can then be able to reach out to you. Also put in the comments below that you've registered for your book. That way I can thank you personally, or have a communication with you personally, and figure out where to send this information, where to send these resources, including a How Money Works book. Now, most people would think that a final expense policy is always going to be for when you're older. And if you stick till the end of the video, I'll show you how it can become a great plan or a great part of your plan, even if you're younger. And traditionally, it is used that way, that if you're older, generally speaking, they will have some guaranteed options where no matter what your health is, no matter what kind of condition you're in, you can still qualify for one of these policies. Now, they're traditionally much more expensive because of that, and you generally get a lot less coverage, maybe $25,000 or up to $50,000 in coverage, and that'll fluctuate company to company. Some go a little bit more, some a little bit less, but it kind of gives you an idea that it's not going to be a huge policy. It's not going to be your main life insurance policy. That's probably going to come in a term or maybe a permanent policy elsewhere, a combination of the two. And the way most people buy or sell this particular product is exactly for that. They know that somebody's going to be passing away soon, and they want to purchase a policy to help them cover that. I've also seen it where multiple kids, maybe there's 3 or 4 or 5 kids in a family, they know mom or dad's going to be passing away in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So they will purchase a final expense policy so that way each of them is putting in a couple $100s a month, that way when that day actually comes, all of that stuff is already taken care of, and they basically put it on layaway, if you will. But what I want to talk about today is the way that we use it and how it can actually be very beneficial, and how we've had people look at this potentially even at a much younger age. Now, the downside to these policies is generally that you're going to have to wait 2 years. They have what's called a return of premium for the first 2 years on most of these policies. So it's not something you can go out and go, hey, we just got a terminal notification that so-and-so is going to be passing away in the next 5 days, so let me hurry up and get an insurance policy, and that way I can make $25,000. It doesn't work that way. Too many people have done that, so they've become smart enough to understand that that's not the way that it should work, and that's really not what life insurance is. So what they have is a 2-year return of premium, meaning if they pass away in those first 2 years, you will not get the death benefit. What you will get is all of the premiums that you've paid in plus 10% on top of that. So you'll at least make something off of it, but it's not going to be that entire death benefit. So this is not going to be something, let me hurry up and get a policy because I know such and such is going to pass away. There is still a planning element that's required with this. And when you understand this concept and what I'm going to explain to you here and how we use it, I think you'll see a great need and benefit for it, even if you're younger. And the reason for that is because what's built into the particular one that we use. And I know this isn't what everybody uses, so it is important to figure out what your final expense policy actually includes. And for me, the final expense policy, one of the least important things in a final expense policy to me is the death benefit. There are lots of other things that come with it that are much more important or valuable than just the death benefit. And we're going to talk about those now. So first and foremost is going to be in a traditional life insurance policy, whether it's a term or a permanent policy, it can take up to 30, 45, 60, even 90 days to get that life insurance policy to pay out, which doesn't sound like a big deal until you are actually in the moment. You would think that that's plenty of time. However, we just had a recent experience where one of our clients passed away, and the family came grieving to us, and that within less than 2 hours of passing away at the hospital kind of walked up and said, hey, we're on the clock here. What are we going to do about the body? We need to get this thing moved. They need to open up that room for somebody else. They're not going to allow them to just stay there indefinitely. And the family felt like that was pretty cruel, but this is just kind of how the world works, that they need to move on with those things. And so generally a family does not go out and shop those things. They don't know how to handle any of this. They haven't transported a body before, especially internationally sometimes. So it can feel very cold when you're dealing with these things. And the crazy part is when you have those services, they want to be paid now. They're not going to allow you to pay them in 30, 60, 90 days oftentimes. Whether that's the funeral home or that's the transport company, all of those things can cost lots of money and they need the money now. So the beautiful part about a final expense policy, or at least the ones that we do, they're generally paid out within 48 to 72 hours that family will have the check. That's a big deal. Now, $25,000 or $50,000 is not a lot of money, but in a situation like that, having it within 2 or 3 days is a big deal. It allows that family to do whatever they need to do and get that paycheck very fast. You go, well, Mackenzie, didn't you just say the death benefit is one of the least most important parts? Yes, but the speed of it and how quickly you get it is very important. And really this next part is important as well. As I just mentioned, most times families are not going to go out and shop caskets. They're not going to visit 15 funeral homes and figure out who has the best price on a casket and a room and a showing and all of the other things that go along with that. They're just going to talk to whoever's close to them, or maybe they get a referral and they're going to go with that company. And that's exactly what our clients did. And then when they were looking at it, the total came out to over $30,000 to be able to do the things they want to do. Now, the cool thing about the final expense package that we do is it's actually a concierge package, which means including the death benefit are all the other things that it does. And one of the particular things that it does is they price shop for you. Basically, they can pull up on the computer in your particular area and find out what the average cost of all of those things should be. It's unfortunate, but those places oftentimes take advantage of people because you're supposed to negotiate, but when you're in that kind of a mood, when emotions are high, logic is very low, and they take advantage of that. So what they did was they called the concierge company and basically said, hey, will you help us negotiate? Can you give us an idea of what we should be paying on this package? And that $30,000 that they would have paid ended up being less than $11,000. So they saved almost $20,000 just by doing this price check and actually talking to the concierge service and having them help negotiate some of these things for all of that. That's a really big deal, especially to have somebody in your corner that's going to take care of these things while you're doing all of the other things that you need to do in planning the wake and having people around and notifying them and just grieving in general. Why would you want to leave all of that to your kids or to your spouse? The next thing that's really cool about it is that it includes a will and an online storage, meaning on the cloud, you can actually store all of your files in there. So between those two, in helping to make sure who's handling everything. But in the online storage, it was really cool because our clients oftentimes have put all of their financial information in there, how to get a hold of their bank accounts, their titles for things, all of the things that we store digitally now, or we used to store on paper, we store digitally. So you can upload it to the cloud and give access to those people after you pass, that they can go in there and retrieve all of that information, from bank accounts to life insurance policies to titles of houses and cars and everything else. And what's really cool is we've even had clients put videos in there, their final goodbyes and the things that they always wanted to say to their family and their goodbyes, and that way the family could watch all of those things and say goodbye one last time. And I think that's really powerful. And then you add on top of that that they have grief counselors or people that they can call, that if the family needs help, that they're having challenge with that. Imagine leaving that with your 8-year-old kid or your 12-year-old son or even your wife, and they don't know how to deal with all these things or who to talk to and all the costs of going to therapy and everything else. And now they can call and talk to the grief counselors who are actually licensed, and they can get help from them during the time that they need most. So yes, it's technically a final expense policy, but I think the concierge package, and that's what they call it, it's not what I'm calling it, that's really the big difference, I think, between what we do and how a lot of other people use final expense. So imagine all of that stuff being taken care of. And just kind of recap really fast, and there's other things, but I'm trying to talk about the main bullet points, is that they get a check within 24 to 48 hours. We've had them even faster than that. That they have somebody who's going to help negotiate on all of those costs and moving the body and getting it buried and all of those other things that they're not going to be taken advantage of there. Then they have the online storage and being able to put all their keepsakes and things and pictures and videos and all of those things that we generally lose when somebody passes, because we don't have access to their phone or know their passwords or how to get onto all of those things. So most of those things are lost. And then obviously the will is in there also, and the grief counselor. So that's a lot to add. You would think that would add a lot of cost to that insurance policy. And we've actually priced these out, and the vast majority of times they end up about the same or a couple dollars more a month to add in all of these other things that I think are even more special and more powerful than just the money on the life insurance side. So if you don't have something like that and you think that that might be helpful, if you don't have enough savings or a way for your family to get a hold of a lot of these things, or you see the entire package of that, and the guy who just passed away was in his 40s, he wasn't that old, so it's not always going to be somebody who's older who's looking for these things. And they have a couple different cool ways to actually be able to pay for it. So maybe you're in a position where you have some extra money and you would want the package more than necessarily the death benefit, but that kind of is a bonus for you as well. They can do a lump sum premium where you can just pay it all up at once, or you can do a monthly payment as well. And I think that's a pretty cool way to be able to do it, especially if you're young. It's not all that expensive. So I hope this was helpful for you and helped you to see final expense in a little bit different way, that if that's something that you are shopping for, I highly recommend, or maybe you weren't even shopping for it, but now you kind of realize where its place or its value is, and that's something that you need some help with, definitely let us know. Now you know what really to look for in a final expense policy. And as I mentioned, we are doing our giveaway, so if you haven't already filled out that MailChimp link down below, I highly recommend you go ahead and do that, and let us know in the comments that you've done that. Also comment and subscribe, and if you do that, I'd love to know in the comments as well. Just say, hey, I subscribed, or I liked, or whatever it might be. That way I can reach out to you and have a personal conversation and thank you in person. And as always, I hope you have a great day, and I hope this was helpful for you. Catch you later. Bye.